Okay, a lot of people have been asking about how to model a scene like this. Okay, so I've already recorded the other videos about what we're going to do later on in this section, but let's go back to modeling because apparently some people still need to know how that works. So of course I've done modeling in the earlier versions of Max in the earlier lectures of this course, and nothing has changed about how to do the modeling. Okay, that's why I leave all that information there, because most of it has not changed. Okay, but let's do it in here as a refresher. I'll show some tips about how I modeled this building. It actually isn't very hard, didn't take very long, maybe 8 hours. Okay, the first thing that I want to show you is how I brought in the CAD. Now, I can't give you this CAD because it does not belong to me. This is a project I did for someone. Okay, but I can show you how I did it. So I brought in the CAD. I had it cleaned up, got rid of all the blocks, dimensions, all those kind of things, and I placed it. Let's turn off objects by hitting Shift O. In the viewport, that will just turn off all objects. Oh, if my hotkeys are set up. Okay, Shift O. There we go. So if you have my hotkeys set up, then Shift O will turn off all objects. Okay, and as promised, I can show you how to do that without a hotkey. If you go into the display panel here, up by your modify panel, display, you can hide by category, which is what I'm doing with the hotkey. Geometry is the category I hid. Shapes are any splines that we've made. Okay, you can also hide lights, cameras, all that stuff. It's nice to have a hotkey for that. Okay, so with all the geometry hidden, we can now see the CAD that I've put in here, and I put it at orthographic view. So this is the exact front view. Okay, so it looks like that. It's back there. 0, 0 is right in this area. Okay, and so you put it back behind 0, 0. If you look on the side, the other elevation I had to make, I took that left elevation and put it way over there to the right. And I usually put them on a layer and freeze them. And then I have the site way down here and the floor plan here. So when I look from the top view, I can see them straight on. Okay, so it's as simple as that. You set them up in orthographic projections. Then with the geometry on, let's hide the camera and the lights real quick and move this geometry. We'll say up. Now remember, I don't use gizmos. I showed that earlier on in the beginning of the previous project we did for exteriors, way back in the beginning of the course. If you do want to use gizmos, it's totally okay. I don't use gizmos. I just select things, lock the selection by hitting spacebar as a hotkey or hitting this lock down here. And then with gizmo off, I can just move it in the Y or use a hotkey to move it in the X only, like so. I've showed all this before. If you want to do it with gizmos, then you can also just keep gizmos on and do it like that, or like that, or like that. Depending on where you click is how it will move, what axis it will move in. So what I do once I have this CAD all set up in here and frozen so that I can't move it or select it, make sure that you can snap to it. You want to be in 2.5 snap. What that does is when you draw a line, it will snap to your CAD, but it will not snap to your CAD. What happens is this line is drawn at 0, the 0 plane in the y-axis, and the CAD remains way back there in the background. So you're not drawing right on top of the CAD, but you are still snapping to it in 2 dimensions, but not 3. Okay? Now, if you were using 3-dimensional snap, and I can tell you guys right now, this is going to be a long lecture because this is the only one I'm going to do on modeling here as a review. Okay? If you need more modeling, you can go back to the previous sections. If you do 3D snap, and then click there and there, you'll notice that it goes right on top of the CAD, which is not what we want here. Okay, so that's the difference between 3D CAD and 2D CAD. Actually, 2.5D CAD. Okay, that's what we typically want if we're drawing in orthographic projection mode here. Okay, so to do this, most of this can be modeled using splines. And the main thing to remember is we use these basic shapes in create, shapes, and then we can just start tracing, right? Snapping. Make sure in snap, if you right click on snap, you make sure and you're snapping to vertex, okay? And that's all I want to snap to. I'm just snapping to the vertices of this CAD back here. Now I didn't show you this exactly before because we were using a sketch and just kind of drawing to it, but now we're snapping properly to actual CAD which have vertices. Okay, so again, that's right click, snap. This is what all the different things you can snap to. We want to snap to vertex. Okay, once we've drawn this rectangle for this wall here, we can then unclick start new shape so that this remains part of the same shape, and we'll take inside this window here, inside this window here. Okay, we now have that little wall there. And of course we can just extrude it using my special toolbar or going to the modifier panel, scrolling down to extrude, and there you go, 8-inch thick wall, perfect. There's the first part of our house. Now we would just continue doing this over and over and over again. This wall is going to be from here to there. We don't want to start a new shape. We want this to be part of the same shape. And now we have our next wall. Extrude, -8. Okay, you can see why that toolbar is coming in handy there. I use extrude so much. Okay, now the next thing to consider is where is this in relationship to each other from the top view. So if we go to top view, you can see those walls kind of floating out there where we don't want them, right? And now this one's getting in our way, so let's move this again over to here. Let's take our walls and move them. This wall is going to go, make sure snaps is on. I have a hotkey for snaps because those will go on and off over and over again. So S is my hotkey for that. Otherwise you can go up here and do it. And we'll snap that right into place there. Make sure it's on 2.5D snap. This one will snap right into place here. Okay, there we go. So if it was on 3D snap, it would be snapping down to that CAD, which is not what we want. Okay, so it looks like there's some discrepancy between the floor plan and the elevation, or they're not lined up perfectly. That's usually to be expected, depending on who your draftsman is. Okay, so that's how you make those walls. Something like this roof is easy as well. Again, it's just based on splines. So if we go to create panel, shapes, line, let's take this and snap here and here. Then as I've showed you before in earlier sections of this course, we can take this vertice, convert it to a Bezier corner, right? And then we can use this handle here, this Bezier handle, and just make it nicely fit that little arc right there. Okay, that gives us the profile of this roof, and we could even take, let's take it further and make this profile part of it too. And I would recommend just snapping on the corners like this, and then snap one right there, and then we'll come back this way. Hold down shift and you'll come back in a straight line, come back to about right there. Now in the vertice mode, with this line selected, go into modifier panel, go into sub-object, vertices, right here in selection, and we can change these ones to Bezier corners, take the handles, move them. I'm going a little bit fast because we've done all this before. Okay, select another vertice here, turn it into Bezier corner, and do that. If you need refresher, more in-depth stuff about this, go back to the beginning of the course where I first introduced modeling to you. I go into this more in depth. Okay, Bezier corner. Talk about the different kind of vertices we can have and how to manipulate them. If you'll remember, I can take this arc here, this line, and go into the attach mode, which is just a tool built into all lines, and attach this other one to it. Okay, now those two are part of the same line. You can even go into vertice mode and select these two vertices which are here, and you could weld them together. Okay, they just welded together. Now it's really connected. What that means is when I move when I select spline, it selects the whole thing instead of just that one and just this one. They're now part of the same spline. Okay, that gives us a nice profile for that roof. Now, if you had a nice roof plan for this, which I don't think I do, I just have a floor plan. Let's create line again, and we'll take from here, make sure we're snapping. We'll go to right. I think it's there, yes. Then we'll go to there. We're outlining the house right now. Okay, that's good. Now that's going to draw right on the floor, which we don't want. We can go to the front view now and raise it up. And I know I'm zooming around a little bit, and that's kind of to demonstrate how setting it up like I've showed you can be fast and efficient. I don't have to go up here to the view cube all the time. I don't have to go and change my views all the time. I don't have to look at all 4 views at the same time like that. I can just quickly zoom around using my hotkeys, which I think is the best way to do it. You might feel differently, so feel free to do it the way you want. Okay, with this spline outlining the house, we now have the profile of the roof and the line that we want that profile to follow. So with the line we want the profile to follow selected, we go into this button here if you're using my UI, which is a sweep, or of course you can go to the modifier list and go down to sweep. Sweep. Okay, and at first it doesn't look right. That's because it's not sweeping the right profile. So what you want to do is go into sweep parameters. Make sure we are using, no, it's not in sweep parameters. It's up here at the top in section type. Use, right now it's using that angle. Use custom section is what we want. And then we just pick which section we want. It's going to be that nice profile we made. Everything looks like it's kind of working, but it's like reversed. Okay, that's when we go into sweep parameters. You can mirror it. And then, what do you know? It looks right. It's just in the wrong place now. So these are pivot alignments. If you click on these, you'll see that it'll put this in different places based on where you want the beginning of that section to be. Okay, so now we're pretty close. Right there. Looks perfect. If it's not quite perfect, you can do offsets like this on the x-axis and on the y-axis. Okay, but everything looks good there. One thing you want to make sure you're not doing is smoothing along this thing, because it's going to kind of try and round these edges. That's what this weird shading is about over here. See that weird shading? So we don't want to smooth the section. Actually, we do want to smooth the section. That's smoothing this way. But we don't want to smooth the path. So turn that off. There, that looks right. Now if we turn off our edges like that, we can see that our roof is working. Okay. Nice little roof there. Okay, so we've started with the basic building blocks of this building, and we're well on our way. That's really some of the basic stuff that we need to model for this. I've showed you a little bit of poly modeling too. Let's take a few more things in this scene and model them, and then the rest are going to be on your own, but it's going to use all the same tools that I've been showing in this video. Okay, here's some edit poly tips for modeling this column right here. Let's take this and just start with a rectangle. Okay, go to the top view and we'll extrude that rectangle. Make the basic shape for that. Put it in place. You can see where it's going to line up right here. Back to the front view. Now let's count how many times this is segmented. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and we'll take this and let's convert it to edit poly. And I've showed you this before too. And now let's take this and select all the edges on that thing. There we go, select all the edges on it. And then we'll do a connect tool. In edge mode, edge subobject mode, go down to connect and click on the dialog box here. And we'll do, what did we say, 8? 8 segments. Okay, they line up pretty well. Now what we can do is, let's see. Let's select all these edges. and see if we can chamfer them. That kind of splits them up. And then select the faces that created. There might be easier ways to do this too, but I'm showing you some poly tools. Okay, we've got all those edges, or all those faces selected, and let's do a bevel on them. Make sure we're beveling based on the local normal. We don't want to go out, we want to go in. And it's getting crisscrossed in there, so we actually want it more like that. Right about there. We can go a little smaller. Yes, like that. Check, accept. Okay, now, if you shade that, there's a nice column for us right there. Fast and easy. Okay, I showed a little bit about poly modeling earlier in the course again, and also if you want to go real in depth to crazy poly modeling, you can get some of my other courses. I have some about doing really advanced poly modeling, and then I have some beginner courses, some total intros to 3ds Max using all default modes, and in there I show a lot more about poly modeling as well. One last thing, let's do the lathe modifier. Again, we'll go to our trusty splines. We'll start tracing the basics of this shape here, hitting all the important points. To there, and then this is a square block on the bottom, so that's not going to be lathe. The lathe is going to rotate this profile around in a circle. Okay, let's just select all these and make them into Bezier corners. And then at each one we can adjust. Now, one thing that I've showed you before too is to turn up the interpolation. That means how many divisions will be in that line. So now it's a much smoother line instead of so choppy. So we're just taking these Bezier handles and making all these shapes kind of come together. It's not perfect. I'm going a little bit fast for the sake of time. Okay, there we go. That's a nice profile for that thing. A little bit tedious making it. But now let's just show you the lathe modifier real quick. Lathe. Now it's lathing around this point, which we don't want. If you lathe it around the maximum, then that works pretty good. And if you want a custom axis to lathe around, then you can go into the sub-object of the axis and move the axis around on the x-axis, or the x and y, which would be kind of crazy. Let's just show you what that looks like though. That's not going to do anything because the x is the only one that matters here. Okay, you can also lathe around the y-axis or the z-axis, but that's obviously not what you want. Actually, y-axis is what you want, x-axis is not what you want. It'll look like that. But y is what you want at a maximum alignment, which puts the pivot right here. And it's close, but actually we need to go a little bit further to the right, like that. Now we have a perfect little lathe. It just takes that profile and spins it around. And of course you can add more segments to it, like that, to make it even smoother. Okay, there you go. So using lathe, a couple edit poly tools, some splines and extrude, and the sweep modifier, you can basically build this entire building. And you'll notice on things like this where there's all this flourish and everything, I kind of just faked it because I was far enough away on the camera that I didn't need to worry about it. Okay, but for most things in here you can just use splines and extrudes, or splines plus sweep, or splines plus lathe. Okay, you will have to get into a little bit more advanced edit poly stuff possibly, or you could do it without it, to make some things like this column and maybe some of this stuff. This is just splines, so again, you just use those Beziers to make these splines and then make them renderable, which I've showed you before. So you take this and kind of do some flourish around here, make it all smoothed out, and then go to the modifier tab while that line is selected and make it renderable. Okay, you can make it rectangular or radial. That's how you do that door. So that's some tips about the modeling of this. It's all basic tools that you apply over and over again and end up with some pretty complicated stuff, even though you're using just the same tools we've been using all along. So hopefully that's helpful as far as insight of how to model something like this.